want to begin by thanking Dr. Thompson and Kareem and also Jonathan, the folks from Go Public Schools, for inviting me to be here today. And I want to thank the people from Go Public Schools for all the tweets. I appreciate it. And I do have a commercial, I know, Justin, but before I get started, I'm actually in a contest with this friend of mine to see who can get the most followers. And so my Twitter handle is Howard L. Fuller. And so shamelessly, I asked you to follow me so I can crush this dude. But in any event, and hopefully some of you all might tweet as I talk. So let me start out by saying I understand that there's a certain amount of controversy about me being invited to speak. And that's really all right with me, because I think controversy is actually a good thing. But what I want you all to know is you're about to hear from a free black man.
That's right.
And what that means is, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Y'all can either like it, don't like it. That ain't my problem. My responsibility is to give you the clearest explanation that I can for what it is that I believe. And that's the responsibility that I'm going to try to assume this afternoon. I stand before you driven by a fundamental belief. And that belief is our children are our most precious gift from God. And that it is our responsibility, with God's guidance, to love them, to nurture them, to care for them, and to make sure that every single one of them is educated. And I would argue that education is the only pathway that they have to freedom. And what's interesting is that as black people, when we came out of slavery, we came out of slavery with the recognition that there was a connection between education and liberation. And we've been on that path, right or wrong, ever since. Martin Luther King Jr. said that freedom is, first of all, the capacity to weigh alternatives. Should I be a doctor? Should I be a dentist? Secondly, freedom is the ability, the capacity to make a decision from amongst those alternatives. And then in the final analysis, you got to take the weight for the decisions that you make. But Paulo Freire said that education isn't about just developing people so that they can fit into the logic of the current order and conform to it. It's really about giving them the capacity to engage in the practice of freedom. And I would argue that in America, the ability of a person to be, quote, free in its truest sense is dependent to a certain extent upon your ability to attain a level of relative economic independence. And that for most of us, you're not going to get to any level of economic anything without a job. And back when there used to be jobs, whether you got an education was going to determine to a large extent what kind of job you got, or whether or not you got any kind of job at all. And so, as I think about it, while I'm clear that the mission of education is much broader than just, can I prepare you to get a job? I understand, though, that for those of us who care about our kids, those of us who have kids, one of the foremost things in your mind is, when they get out of school, are they going to be able to get a job? Because the reality of it is, at the end of the day, we tell the kids at our school that we want you to be able to not live at your mama's house. No, I'm serious. At a certain point in time, it's, look, you got to get out of here. I mean, I don't know where you're going, but you got to raise up out of here. But in order to really do that, because nobody's going to just, most people just not going to put their kids out on the street. We got some people who will and who do. But mostly it is, what is your capacity to become economically self-sufficient? And all of this ties back to an education. But unfortunately, far too many of our poorest children, a disproportionate number of whom are children of color, will never be able to realize freedom because the systems that we have them in are not giving them the education that they need to have a chance.
That's right.
And people get mad when I say that. Be mad. It's true. It's true. And so, as I've traveled over this country the last 10 years, talking about these issues, I've listened to educators, researchers, union members, policy analysts, parents, students, and many of them would argue that our public education system, as it is currently constructed, is fundamentally doing its job. And that when they admit that there's some problems, they must argue, though, that these problems really have to do with stuff that happens before they ever get to us. And that basically the system is not broken. It's all of the other things that surround the system. And actually, there's a certain amount of truth to that. But the reality of it is, I make the following argument. Number one, that the current approaches and power arrangements in our current system of K-12 education works well for a significant number of kids. We ought to be clear. This system does work well for a number of kids. And for those kids, they do well on various forms of assessment. Their schooling gives them pathways to participation in mainstream America. Their parents are involved as they want to be. They're happy and they empowered. Their school environments, physically and mentally, are structured in ways that respect them and respect their communities. And there's an underlying assumption in those schools that that school had better produce or drastic changes are going to be made. Right. And produce means when these kids get out of here, they better be ready to go to college. That's a fact. At the same time, there are a significant number of our children, particularly poor children of color, living in cities like Chicago and Jackson and Birmingham and Memphis and New York and Milwaukee and New Orleans and Detroit and Oakland, where most of our poorest non-white children live, where the current system does not work well at all. They don't do well on various forms of assessments. Their schooling gives them pathways to the lowest rung of American society. Their parents are unhappy, uninvolved, and unpowered. Their school environments, physically and mentally, are structured in ways that devalue them as persons and are contemptuous of the communities where they come from. And when those kids don't learn, they and their parents are blamed. And it took me a while to understand that you parents out there, y'all sending us your worst kids. So you can see how we do with them. And that you got your best, see, it took me a while to get this. You got your best kids at home, waiting to see how we gonna do with your worst kids. And hell, there's help on the way. Because if we do all right with your worst kids, you finally gonna send us your best kids. The reality is you done sent us the only kids that you have. And I would argue that if it's the parents' responsibility to educate the kids, then hell, let's close down all these multi-billion-dollar educational institutions and give the money to the parents. At a certain point in time, we have a responsibility, and I'm going to talk about this, to educate the kids that come to us. We cannot teach kids that used to be there, kids that we wish were there. We got to teach the kids who are actually there. So there's a clear understanding in these other schools that I'm talking about that if don't nothing happen to the kids, it's cool. Everybody gonna get a raise. Ain't nothing gonna happen. Y'all know it, I know it. When I was superintendent, I sent kids to schools where I knew when they went there, they weren't gonna learn nothing. Hell, ain't nobody learned nothing in 20 years. Y'all know the schools, everybody know the schools. And then when you try to close one, here come the community with their old letter sweaters and stuff on. You know, talking about what it was like when I was there. You ain't there. That was 40 years ago. Your sweater too small. I mean, what are y'all talking about? This is my school. That was 40 years ago, man. The question is, what's happening to the kids at the school today? And we still out here operating. We still got teachers telling our kids that my check gonna come whether you learn or not. This is almost 2014, and people are telling our kids that. So I'm gonna fight as long as I got a breath to end this idea that there is currently a one best system that works for all children. I would argue that that's an illusion. And that we have to fight for are new systems of education that have new approaches and different approaches to educate our children. We need to fight for systems and strategies that truly empower parents. Systems that allow dollars to follow students and hold adults accountable for student achievement. And in the final analysis, no change is going to take place when the power remains the same. Y'all can like it, don't like it, that's your, but I hear people talk about we got to have win-win strategies. How you have a win-win strategy when somebody got all the power and somebody ain't got no power? What's the win-win strategy to that? So, what does all that mean for those of you in this room? I'm hoping that if you're in this room, and please understand, I get that some of what I'm going to say you don't agree with, that's all right. But what I'm saying is that if we truly care about our children, see the big lie in this country is that our children mean everything to us. The reason why that's a lie is because if it was true, what's happened to them every day wouldn't be happening. And so what I'm saying to you is the type of changes that we're going to need ain't going to come from Washington, and it ain't going to come from Sacramento. It's going to have to come from local communities who organize themselves so that they can fight and win on behalf of our children. People often ask me when I speak, why are you such an angry Negro? You know what I'm mad about? I'm mad about all of this data that Kareem showed you and stuff I could talk to you about. But what I'm really mad about is hell, we ain't mad. You know, we come to these meetings. We the going to meetings people on the face of the earth. We do two things well. We call in on the radio and we go to meetings. And each one of those we think meant something. In fact, people think if they come to a meeting, especially if there's, people don't know you, you can be all militant and stuff, get in the meeting. But then when you leave the meeting, ain't nothing changing. And I hear a lot about change in America, especially during these elections. And the one thing that I've come to understand is that in America, we all want change as long as nothing changes. You see what I'm saying? Because change, then we wouldn't have what we have. And our poorest children are caught up in this, let's talk, let's have a conversation about change, not change. And the facts are brutal. I mean, if you go to, I mean, you saw this stuff, but if you go to Ed Trust's website, because Katie Haycock, in my opinion, they do the best job of looking at this data over a 20-year period. And if you go to their website, there's a fact that's there that says that 13-year-old white children in this country do read and do math at the same level as Black and Latino high school graduates. And the data is laid out. And so, you know, like, one of the things that happens, man, is, especially again during elections, you know, when these white politicians and these bougie Negro and Latino politicians too, when they roll up in a black church, first thing they all say, take a whole village to educate the child. First of all, most of them ain't never been to the village, couldn't find the village with MapQuest. Come up here talking about it takes a whole village. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of that village. So when I read Thomas Friedman's book, The World is Flat, there's another parable in there, I'm gonna give it to you. And what that parable says is that every day in Africa, a gazelle gets up. And the gazelle knows that if it can't run faster than the fastest lion, it's going to get killed. Every day when the sun comes up, a lion starts running because he knows that if he can't run faster than the slowest gazelle, he's going to stop. Either way, when the sun comes up, they both start running. And what's happening is, all over this world, when the sun comes up, young people are running. And they're running faster than our best young people. So what chance are our kids going to have in Oakland, who can't read, can't write, can't think, can't compute, can't analyze? No chance. That's how much chance they got. No chance. And I tell our kids at our school every day that an education in America guarantees you nothing, but I'll guarantee you, you're going to have nothing without an education. And so you think about this. Because these young people are not going to just be competing with people from the east side or the west side, whatever side y'all got, or LA or whatever. They're going to be competing with people from all over the world. And you know, I gave a graduation speech, and the kids got mad at me because they said I was snapping them. You know, but all I said was, first of all, some of y'all think you're cute. You know, two things. First of all, you're not as cute as you think you are. And two, it ain't gonna last forever. You know, trust me on that. And that this world that you're going out into, cute, may get you up to the door. Some of y'all through the door. But once they find out that your head is empty, you're like done. I mean, we gotta talk real to our kids about the real world that they're facing. But, I don't know, I hear people all the time say, we just gotta fix the system. No. We gotta do more than fix this. We gotta radically change it. I mean, we almost gotta have like a revolutionary point of view instead of a reform point of view. And let me say something real clear for all you all. I'm not saying that the traditional systems of education don't have excellent educators who are every day doing heroic things for our children. You know they do, I know they do. The issue is not individual educators. The issue is we have individual. When I started talking about this dude, come here, man, my mama was a teacher. Well, man, I ain't talking about your mama. I know that in our community, hell, you can't be talking about people's mama. I ain't talking about your mama, your grandmama, your aunt, and none of them. I'm saying that the system that your mama and your grandmama are in is not working for large numbers of our kids. When I was superintendent, people said, I want a smaller classroom. Hell, go to any high school in February. Not only do you have smaller classes, you got a small school. I'm serious. Y'all laughing because it's true.
Yeah, it is.
Because half the kids gone. They voted with their feet to tell us this is not working for me.
Right.
And so, what I'm trying to do is to say, let's have a discussion about that. Now, people accuse me of being against public education. Let me make something real clear. There's a difference between public education and the system that delivers public education. Oakland Public Schools, for all due respect, is not public education. It's a delivery system. And since it wasn't created by God, maybe we could change it. Maybe there's some different delivery systems that we need in order to make public education work. Because public education is a concept. It's the idea that we want the public to be educated. There are a variety of different ways that we could organize ourselves to make good on that promise. There's no like single one way. People say, oh, you're all about privatizing education. When you're a black man in America and you would dare to have an idea, if the idea is accepted by progressives, and I've always wondered how you define progressive. Because you did something progressive in 1930. It don't make you progressive in 2014. Progressive is not absolute, it's relative to time and historical conditions. And so, if you're black and you do something that progressives like, you like brilliant. If you do something that so-called conservatives like, you've been duped. So, I've been brilliantly duped. Because, like when you talk about Republicans, Democrats, I don't trust none of them. All of them have rubbed me on my head at one point in history and called me boy.
Come on.
And so people say, I'm trying to privatize education. Let me be upfront. One of my closest friends in the world, one of the people I respected more than a whole bunch of handkerchief head Negroes that I know, is John Walton. And John Walton was the son of Sam Walton. And John and I were friends. I was one of 4 people that spoke at his funeral service. And people said, well, you done sold out to Walmart. And you taking money from these white people. And one of the most interesting things is to have 2 black people argue about which white people's money is okay. You feel what I'm saying? Your white people's money is better than my white people's money. And blah, 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 blah. Yes, and you blah, 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 blah. I mean, what the heck? Yes, I take money from the Walton Family Foundation. My only problem is I don't get enough of it. That's my problem. Because if you're fool enough to have these people tell you, oh, you can't take money from them, they ain't giving you nothing. And all of y'all out here know ideas with no resources to implement them don't mean squat. And I'm going to spend all of my time talking to somebody who can't bust a grape about where I get my money from. So, I'm just being straightforward. I'm not trying to hide nothing. And people say, well, you believe in them vouchers. Yeah, actually I do. I hear people tell me, for example, you can't end poverty by throwing money at it. Well, actually, you can. That's sort of how you end poverty, but you give people some money. I'm just saying. But yeah, I support choice for low-income and working class that we're America, where only those of us with money have the ability to choose the best school for our children. No, and I'm never going to do that. And I understand that we got, all of y'all in here who are honest, know that if you got money in America, you got choice. Because if you got money, you're going to do one of three things. You're going to either move to a community, if schools don't work for your kids, you're going to move to a community where they do work. You're going to put your kids in private school. Or you're going to get Sylvan or somebody. You're going to find the best tutoring that you can pay for. If you got money. And if you got money, you may do all three. The only people who are trapped in places that don't work for their kids are low-income and working-class people. And we got people teaching in schools. They would never put their own children in. Demanding that other people's children stay there so I can get paid to put my kids in private school. Come on now. Hypocrites. Hypocrites. You know, this woman was interviewing me at the New York Times. Oh, I can't support vouchers because they don't help all the kids. And I'm not asking y'all to do it. I'm telling you what I support. You support whatever you want. I'm explaining why. And I said, look, I don't even know you. I don't know if you got kids. But I bet you if you got kids, they ain't going to school in the South Bronx. And she said, well, you know, it don't help all the kids. I come from the Harriet Tubman School. Harriet Tubman got up every day saying, I want to end slavery. But in the meantime, I'm going to rescue every slave that I can. I get up every day saying, I want the whole system to get better. But I got a moral responsibility to rescue as many kids as I can. And none of y'all in this room know what saving that one kid's life is going to mean to the world. And so, yeah, I'm not trying to apologize. Because I believe what I believe. And I believe that those of us who care about kids, you want the traditional system to be successful. You want charters to be successful. You want private schools to be successful. But you want to open up the whole milieu to poor people. And not just have that only be for those of us with money. And I believe in some, you know, because people tell me, oh, Howard, you know, you being duped. Y'all, Derek Bell was a great constitutional lawyer, right? Derek Bell was one of the young lawyers back in 1934 when they was arguing about whether or not we ought to try to go to Brown or make Plessy work. Derek wrote a book, he wrote a lot of books, but one of them, Silent Covenants. And he taught me a concept called interest convergence theory. And what interest convergence theory is this, is that he made the argument that black people in this country have only made progress when our interests converged with white people who were in charge. And he said, go back and look at the Civil Rights Movement. We made progress in the Civil Rights Movement because of our own struggle, but also at the point in time that we were fighting for the Civil Rights Movement, America was trying to convince the rest of the world that democracy was a better form of government than communism. And that was getting hard if Bull Connor sickened dogs on people. So at a certain point, they pulled Bull aside, hey man, you gotta quit sicking dogs on people. Now some people said it because they didn't think that should happen. Other people said it because you make it harder for us to make our argument. Now if you understand interest convergence theory, you understand that your interests will converge with people whose worldview you don't share. You know the thing about black people? Black people are like schizophrenic about white people. You know, like, if a black person goes into a room of all white people, many black people assume you're going to get caught. Why? We don't have brains enough to go into a room with our agenda and talk to them when they got their agenda. Everybody got an agenda. You know, black people say, I want black people to be leaders. As soon as we get one, that nigga sold out. I mean, we got black people mad at Black right now. Man, I still got to pay my mortgage. You know, he ain't doing nothing for us. So what I'm trying to say to you all is, in order for us to make progress, we sometimes have to unite with people whose worldview we don't share. But the question is, are we trying to make a statement, or are we trying to educate our kids? I think Malcolm said, by all means necessary. Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that's what he said. And so, I want to say a couple of things. I'm getting ready to be controversial now, so I assume I haven't said nothing. Yeah. Okay, so I just want y'all to, relax and everything. Okay, so since this event is being co-sponsored by the Oakland Alliance of Black School Educators, I would be remiss if I didn't say something about the challenge that face black educators and more generally the black community. So I'm going to talk about this. Okay, first of all, educational institutions are economic institutions as much as they are educational institutions. And there's a book called The Color of School Reform by Jeffrey Henry. And what he talks about is that school districts have been the entree to the middle class for black people. So when people come up with these radical changes that's going to alter those school districts, with all due respect, the first thought is pensions, careers, mortgages, and etc., all of which I get. But let's just be honest about it. We're talking about economics. We're talking about impact on jobs. And it's exacerbated even more if a school is shut down that had black people working for it, and then a charter school rolls into the community and all the people in it are white. We got to talk about this as real. This is not fiction. This is real. And so what happens is the race dynamic shows itself, but it's the economic dynamic that is at the foundation of the racial dynamic that we're now looking at. I gave a speech down in Louisiana, and it was about 900 people there, and it was about 100 black people. And I made a statement I'm going to say to y'all because it's true. I said, look, first of all, man, anytime any white people come up with a strategy for us, by definition, we're supposed to be suspicious. Okay? And so what's the first thing black people say? Who behind this? Who really behind this? I know there's somebody behind this. And black people ought to keep saying that. And they ought to keep asking those questions. Because the way that race has worked, see, I'm from a generation that actually sat in the back of the bus. Okay? I didn't read about it. When I was born in Louisiana, when I went back to Shreveport, I was going back to Shreveport until I was 14 years old to visit my grandmother. So I know what it's like to sit in the back of the bus and drink out of the colored water. This ain't no theory. I didn't see that in a movie called, was that 12 Years a Slave or something? I actually experienced that. And so, for people like me, there are scars that ain't never gonna go away. And I'm just saying that to y'all so that you're clear about that. But what we then gotta understand though is sometimes our people use race as a cover for incompetence. I'm gonna say that. See, because anytime you have a meeting like this, there are two elephants sitting in the room that don't nobody want to talk about, race and class. Okay? I'm talking about it.
Thank you.
Because it plays itself out in all kinds of strange ways. So think about this, those of us who see ourselves as ed reformers. The black community look at us and they say, hey, you know what? All the people who support what you do, they're against affirmative action. They're for the death penalty. They're against the minimum wage. They don't want us to have health insurance. And you keep going down the list. But you say that we're supposed to be with y'all because they support reform? See, we got to understand how that plays out in our community. And I've said this to people. Look, man, I can't vote against everything that helps our community and then tell me you for vouchers and I'm supposed to say, oh, okay, cool. No. The reality of it is we have to put the struggle for ed reform within the context of a larger struggle for freedom and dignity in this country. So, here's what black educators got to do. And these are hard questions. Are our salaries, our benefits, and our pensions more important to us than having our children effectively educated? Have we become so passive and scared? I didn't say scared. Scared that we are unwilling to speak to power about what happens in these districts or individual schools when it comes to educating our children. How can we remain mute when we know what it is that's happening to our children? Have we bought into these structures? The Democratic Party, Republican Party, whatever party y'all have bought into, have you bought into it to the extent that you are no longer committed to purpose, but you are now committed to the thing that's supposed to get us to purpose? Because you know what? We're supposed to be committed to purpose. And the moment you become more committed to a particular arrangement to get you to purpose is the moment that you move closer to become a protector of the status quo. Because the issue, I support charters, but I support charters because I think it is a lever to help us get educated. If it don't work, I ain't for it. I'm for what works for our children. And what works for our children at this moment in history. And 10 years from now, we may have to have a meeting and be totally against all of it because it ain't working. But you see, you won't do that if you get committed to the arrangement instead of the reason why the arrangement exists. Hotep said, freedom isn't free. And freedom really isn't a place, it's a launching pad for constant pursuit. And that's what we must be, in constant pursuit. And then you have to ask yourself, why are some of y'all so opposed to low-income parents getting choice? Why y'all mad about that? I still got a sign up in my basement that say power to the people. And the problem is some of y'all who used to be for power to the people, you are no longer for that because you are now a part of the bureaucracy. And you are no longer interested in empowering the people. Hey, I've been to Oakland. Let me tell y'all something. Y'all don't know, I got two names. My slave name, Howard Fuller, and my other name, Owusu Sudoku. In the 1970s, I came to Oakland, just so y'all know. Because I was organizing to support African liberation. In 1972, I organized a demonstration where 30,000 black people marched in support of African liberation. So I've been coming in and out of Oakland for a long time. I was coming in and out of Oakland when there was a strong organization of black workers in Oakland. That's how far I go. So when people start talking to me about Oakland, I'm listening, but I ain't saying how much I know. And I know that this community has been hurting for a long, long time. It didn't just get started. And now what we're faced with is how black people and Latinos gonna work together. Yeah, I'm saying it. I'm saying that instead of black folks around, oh man, where all these Latino people come from? It don't matter where they came from, they're here. Hey, where did you come from? At some point in time, we got to figure out how we're going to work together. Think about a powerful coalition that can develop if Black and Latino parents come together and begin to understand their common interests. Because the common interests are the same, educating our children. See, the reality is that what you see happening in Oakland and in other parts of California, although I tease people when I come out here about California, y'all should have the right to secede. But California is different. But California is in some ways more like what America has become. And so when these people start talking about we got to take back our country, who they trying to take it back from? No, you got to think about this. And so we need to start talking in Oakland about how Black and Latino people are going to sit down and develop a common agenda for how we're going to ensure that our kids get educated. Because Latino kids are not getting educated, Black kids are not getting educated. That's just a fact. And so we can't keep thinking about the world that used to be. I'm asking you to think about the world that is. And how do we change this world? Now, one last thing before I sit down. I talked a lot about the need to change school systems and schools and all that, but I want to make myself very, very clear that schools alone cannot solve the problems of our children.
Thank you.
And that race and class matters for our children's life chances. I understand young people tell me that we're in a post-racial America. And maybe we are. I saw it, figured it out, whatever it is. So y'all gonna have to tweet me and tell me what it is so I get it. But until I get it, I'm looking at the fact that race still matters in America. It still has an impact on our children's life chances. But more difficult than race is class.
Thank you.
See, what's interesting in America is you hear people who say money don't matter. The only people who say that got money. Don't nobody who is poor rolling around in America talk about how cool it is to be broke in America. When people say that, that's one of them cocktail type statements. When you're up on the top floor of the tallest building and you got a martini in your hand, I wish I didn't have all this responsibility of all this money. I'm like, hey man, call me. You feel what I'm saying? You all know and I know that we got some children who ought to get a medal just for showing up at school. Given what it is they're going through before they ever get to us. I don't often, and I'm just saying this, I don't want Diane to get mad at me, but, I don't get into debates with Diane Ravitch.
Yeah.
We actually used to be friends and whatever, we may still, who knows. But anyway, so one day I was in the DC airport, I was on Twitter, and John White, the superintendent from Louisiana, he sent out a tweet that said, something like zip code shouldn't be destiny. I thought it was really cool, so I retweeted. All of a sudden, Diane's picture showed up on my thing, on my Twitter feed. I was like, and she was like, Howard, you know that poverty matters. So I tweeted Diane back and said, Diane, when did y'all figure that out? I mean, what, did I miss a memo? What? Who don't know that? Of course poverty matters. It matters deeply. Kids cannot learn if they come to school hungry. Kids cannot learn if they come to school after being abused and neglected. We gotta fight on those issues also. And for all of y'all who talk about no excuses schools, that ain't the same as no empathy schools. You feeling what I'm saying? I mean, you can't say, well, I know you slept in a car last night, it don't matter. Hell, that does matter. But the trick is being able to understand the impact that this has, but not use that as an excuse not to educate kids. But you can't And kids need to see people in their community go to work to understand the connection between education and work. Kids need to interact with adults who have already formed opinions about them because of their skin color. Or you got these young brothers wearing their pants. You know, when I see some of these young brothers, what I see is somebody who understands physics. Because there's no other explanation for how they're able to do this. And not only walk, but hell, run. You know what I mean? And you know, before Chris Rock, there was Richard Pryor. And so Richard Pryor was talking about low running. So I see these brothers low running with their pants hanging down. Or because they got earrings in their nose or their ears or stripes in their head or whatever it is. You know why you got to think about this? Because a whole lot of y'all, the older you get, the more angelic becomes your youth. Did you understand what I just said? Because a lot of y'all were knuckleheads. But now you're all upstanding, So my point is, what good is it to be young if you don't do stuff that shocks adults? It ain't no fun. So I'm just saying that we got to understand all of these things that are happening to our children. We got to challenge our children. But we got to realize what they're dealing with. And our children today are carrying around more pain than any young people ought to ever have to deal with in their lifetime. Because if you read Tuff's book about how our children succeed, the first chapter is about grit and determination, all that. But most of the rest of the book is about what? Mental health issues that our kids are dealing with by virtue of the stress that they're under every single day. So, I'm just saying to you all, we got a huge challenge in front of us. And you can like the fact I support choice, don't like it, whatever. My challenge to you is, if you don't like what I'm doing, then you do. What is it that you are doing on a day-to-day basis to save the lives of these children? And you look around this room, and you all think about this. We've got to get to the point where we say nothing is more important than saving the lives of our children. So I'll leave you with two quotes. One of them is by Rod Evans. And for those who've been around a while, you see stuff come around again. But back in the day, in the 80s, there was the effective schools movement. And Rod Evans said, we can, whenever and wherever we choose, educate all children whose schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to know to accomplish the task. Whether or not we do it must finally depend upon how we feel about the fact that we've not done it so far. And then William Daggett, he said, we must love our children's hopes, their dreams, their prayers, their aspirations, more than we love the institutional heritage of the school system, or more than we love charters, or more than we love any particular form. What we have to love more than we love, that is our children. Thank you very much.